Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
You know what they say about tea? It reveals everything. The quality of the leaves, the temperature of the water, the patience of the person brewing it. But most importantly, it reveals the character of those who drink it. I learned this lesson the hard way sitting across from someone who would change my life forever, while my ex-boyfriend's cruel words still echoed in my mind. Claire, you're too low class. Nobody cares about your stupid tea ceremonies. Let me start from the beginning. Because every good story needs context, like every good tea needs the right water temperature. My name is Claire, and I own a small tea house in the arts district of our city. It's not much to look at from the outside: weathered brick walls, a simple wooden sign that I painted myself, and windows that catch the afternoon light just right. Inside, it's my sanctuary. Mismatched vintage chairs surround low wooden tables, shelves lined with glass jars containing loose-leaf teas from around the world, and the gentle sound of water simmering in my prized clay kettle that belonged to my grandmother. This place represents everything I am, everything I've worked for, everything Victor tried to destroy. Victor was my boyfriend of 2 years, though looking back, I'm not sure why I stayed that long. He was tall, conventionally handsome, and worked in finance, the kind of man my mother thought I should be grateful to have. But Victor had this way of making everything I loved feel small and insignificant. When I talked about expanding the tea house, he'd roll his eyes. When I got excited about a new blend I'd created, he'd change the subject to his stock portfolios. Tea is a dying art, Claire, he'd say, not even looking up from his phone. Nobody our age cares about sitting around sipping leaves in hot water. You need to think bigger, more profitable. The worst part wasn't his dismissiveness, it was how he made me start to doubt myself. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was living in some fantasy world where artisanal tea could actually matter to people. But then Luna walked into my shop. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October, one of those perfect autumn days when the light filters through colored leaves and makes everything look like a painting. I was experimenting with a new jasmine blend when the bell above my door chimed. I looked up to see a woman I'd never seen before, and trust me, in a neighborhood this small, you notice newcomers. She was stunning, but not in the obvious way that turns heads on the street. Luna had this quiet elegance, short, perfectly styled black hair, intelligent dark eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and she moved with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are. She wore a tailored charcoal coat over dark jeans and boots that looked expensive but practical. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice warm with a slight accent I couldn't place. "I was wondering if you might have any oolong teas? Something traditional, but not too heavy." I nearly dropped my measuring spoon. In 2 years of running this place, Victor was the first person to walk in and ask for something specific beyond just regular tea or whatever's cheapest. "Actually, yes," I said, trying not to sound as excited as I felt. "I have a beautiful tea Kuan Yin that just came in from Faijian province. It's got this incredible floral complexity, but it's still approachable if you're not used to Chinese teas." Her face lit up. "Tea Kuan Yin? That's Iron Goddess of Mercy, right?" I haven't had a proper cup since I was in Beijing 2 years ago. My heart did this little skip. Someone who actually knew tea. Someone who understood that what I did here wasn't just boiling leaves in water, but an art form, a cultural tradition. A way of connecting with something bigger than ourselves. I prepared the tea with extra care, warming the small clay teapot with hot water, measuring the leaves precisely, timing the steeps to the second. Luna watched every movement with genuine interest, asking questions about the process, the origin of the tea, why I chose this particular vessel. When I finally poured the pale golden liquid into 2 small cups, she closed her eyes and inhaled the steam before taking her first sip. The expression on her face was pure appreciation, the kind of look Victor had never given anything I made. "This is extraordinary," she said softly. "You really know what you're doing?" We talked for 3 hours. I learned that Luna was a food and culture journalist who had just moved to the city for a new job at the local magazine. She traveled extensively, spent time in tea gardens in China and Sri Lanka, studied the history of tea trade routes. But more than that, she listened when I talked about my own journey with tea, how my grandmother had taught me the basics, how I'd spent years learning from masters in different traditions. "You know," she said as the afternoon light began to fade, I'd love to write a piece about this place, about what you're doing here. Traditional tea culture is experiencing this incredible renaissance, but most people don't know where to find the authentic experience. My stomach dropped. Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, I don't think people would be interested in. Are you kidding? Luna leaned forward, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Claire, what you've created here is special. This isn't just a tea shop, it's a cultural bridge. You're preserving something important while making it accessible to a new generation. I felt tears prick at my eyes. When was the last time someone had described my work as important, as special? Victor's voice echoed in my head, telling me I was wasting my time, that I needed to be more realistic about my future. I should probably ask my boyfriend first, I said quietly. He handles more of the business side of things. Luna's expression shifted slightly, though she tried to hide it. Of course, but Claire, you know this place is yours, right? Your vision, your expertise, your passion. Don't let anyone else make decisions about your art. That night, I brought up Luna's interview offer to Victor over dinner. He was scrolling through his phone while picking at the pasta I'd made, barely, listening as I explained about the journalist who wanted to feature the tea house. Wait, what? He finally looked up when I mentioned the magazine. Someone wants to write about your little hobby shop. It's not a hobby, Victor. It's my business, my career. He laughed, actually laughed. Claire, come on. You make maybe enough to cover rent on that place. It's cute, but it's not a real business. And honestly, do you really want some stranger poking around, asking questions? What if they figure out how little money you actually make? It'll be embarrassing. She wasn't interested in the financial side. She wanted to write about the cultural aspects, the tea traditions. Nobody cares about that stuff, Claire. Look, I've been thinking. My company is expanding and they're looking for administrative assistants. The pay is decent, you'd have real benefits, and you could keep the tea thing as a weekend hobby. It's time to grow up. The words hit me like a slap. Time to grow up. As if everything I built, everything I was passionate about, was just childish fantasy. But something had shifted in me during my conversation with Luna. For the first time in months, I'd felt seen, valued, like what I did mattered. I'm going to do the interview, I said quietly. Victor's fork clattered against his plate. What did you just say? I said I'm going to do the interview. Luna thinks the tea house could be really successful if more people knew about it. She understands what I'm trying to do here. Luna? Victor's voice took on that edge it got when he felt challenged. You're taking business advice from some random woman you met today? Someone you know nothing about. She's not random. She's a professional journalist who specializes in food and culture. She's traveled all over the world studying tea traditions. She knows more about this industry than me. Victor stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. I'm the one. With the business degree, Claire? I'm the one who understands markets and consumer behavior. This Luna person is just telling you what you want to hear. Maybe that's because what I want to hear is that my work has value. The silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable. Victor's jaw worked like he was chewing his next words carefully. Fine, he said finally. Do your little interview. But don't come crying to me when nothing comes of it. And don't expect me to pretend your tea shop is anything more than what it is. A nice hobby that doesn't pay the bills. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door. I'm going out. Don't wait up. After he left, I sat in my empty apartment, surrounded by the silence he had left behind. Part of me wanted to call Luna and cancel, to apologize and say I'd changed my mind. Victor's words had that effect on me. They made me doubt everything I thought I knew about myself. But then I thought about the way Luna had watched me prepare the tea, the genuine curiosity in her questions, the excitement in her voice when she talked about featuring my shop. Someone saw value in what I did. Someone thought it was worth sharing with the world. I picked up my phone and texted Luna. I'd love to do the interview. When would work for you? Her response came back almost immediately. How about Thursday afternoon? I promise to make you and your beautiful tea house look amazing. Thursday. Couldn't come fast enough. I spent the intervening days cleaning every surface in the shop, reorganizing my tea collection, and practicing what I might say if Luna asked difficult questions. Victor barely spoke to me, responding to my attempts at conversation with grunts and eye rolls. You're nervous about this interview thing? He observed Wednesday night, watching me reorganize my tea jars for the third time. I want everything to be perfect. Claire, relax. It's probably just going to be a tiny blurb in some section nobody reads. Don't build it up too much in your head, but I couldn't help building it up. For the first time in years, someone wanted to celebrate what I did instead of tolerating it. Luna arrived Thursday afternoon with a professional camera and a notebook filled with research questions. She'd clearly done her homework, asking about the sourcing of my teas, the history behind different brewing methods, my personal journey into the world of tea culture. Tell me about this space, she said, looking around the shop with fresh eyes. What were you trying to create here? I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't expected. I told her about my grandmother, who had immigrated from Taiwan and brought her tea traditions with her. How she'd taught me that tea wasn't just a beverage, but a way of slowing down, of creating connection, of honoring the plants and the people who cultivated them. I wanted to create a space where people could experience that, I said, warming a pot for a special aged pourer I've been saving, where they could step away from their busy lives and engage with something that's been bringing people together. For thousands of years, Luna nodded, scribbling notes. And how has the community responded? I hesitated. The truth was, business had been slow. Most of my customers were elderly residents who remembered when tea shops were more common, plus a few adventurous college students. The younger professional crowd, people like Victor, seemed to prefer their caffeine fast and convenient. It's been building slowly, I said diplomatically. I think people are still discovering what we offer here. What about your partner? Is he involved in the business? The question caught me off guard. My boyfriend? No, he has his own career. He's in finance, but he's supportive of what you're doing here. I poured the dark, rich pu'er into small cups, buying myself time to think. How could I explain Victor's attitude without sounding like I was complaining? How could I admit that the person closest to me thought my life's work was worthless? He wants me to be practical, I said finally. He worries about the financial sustainability. Luna accepted her cup and inhaled the earthy aroma. Practical is important, but so is passion. In my experience, the businesses that succeed long-term are the ones driven by genuine love for what they do. You can't fake this level of expertise. Claire, you can't manufacture this kind of authentic experience. We spent another hour talking about the future of artisanal tea, about the younger generation's growing interest in mindful consumption and authentic experiences. Luna had insights from her travels, stories about other small business owners who had built successful enterprises around traditional crafts. I think you're sitting on something really special here, she said as she packed up her camera. I'm going to make sure the article captures that. When do you think it might run? Next month's issue. But Claire, I hope you won't wait for the article to start believing in yourself. What you've created here is remarkable. After she left, I felt like I was glowing from the inside out. Someone understood. Someone saw the value in what I'd been working toward. For the first time in months, I felt excited about the future instead of anxious about it. Victor was already home when I got back to the apartment, sitting on the couch with a beer and his laptop. How'd your interview go? He asked without looking up. Really well, actually. Luna was amazing. She really gets what I'm trying to do. With the shop. She thinks there's a lot of potential for growth. She's seen similar businesses in other cities that have become really successful by focusing on authentic experiences rather than just selling products. That's nice. His dismissive tone deflated some of my excitement, but I pressed on. She mentioned that her magazine reaches a lot of young professionals, people with disposable income who are interested in unique experiences. If even a fraction of their readers visit the shop, Claire. Victor finally looked at me, his expression tired. I don't want to be the bad guy here, but you need to manage your expectations. One article isn't going to transform your business overnight. Most people will read it, think, oh, that's nice, and forget about it 5 minutes later. You don't know that. I know how marketing works. I know how consumer behavior works. And I know that specialty tea shops aren't exactly a growth industry. I felt the familiar sting of his words, but something was different this time. Luna's voice echoed in my head. Don't let anyone else make decisions about your art. Maybe. You're wrong, I said quietly. Victor's eyebrows shot up. Excuse me? Maybe you're wrong about the tea shop. Maybe you're wrong about what people want. Maybe you're wrong about me. The air in the room seemed to thicken. Victor set down his laptop and gave me his full attention for the first time in weeks. Where? Is this coming from Claire? You spend one afternoon talking to some journalist and suddenly you're an expert on business strategy. I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I'm also not going to let you keep talking about my work like it's worthless. I never said it was worthless. You said it was a hobby. You said nobody cares about it. You said I need to grow up and get a real job. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working in that way that meant he was trying to control his temper. I said those things because I care about you, he said finally, because I don't want to see you waste years of your life chasing something that's never going to pay off. I want you to have security, stability, a future. What if my version of the future looks different from yours? Then your version is unrealistic. The words hung between us like a blade. This was it, the fundamental divide that had been growing for months. Victor saw my dreams as obstacles to be overcome. I was starting to see his skepticism as the real obstacle. I think we need to take a break, I said, surprising myself with how calm my voice sounded. A break from what? From this. From us. I need some space to figure out who I am when I'm not constantly being told who I should be. Victor stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. You're breaking up with me? Over what? Some tea shop fantasy? I'm taking a break because I need to remember what it feels like to believe in myself again. The next few weeks were a blur of emotions. Victor moved out, taking his constant criticism with him, but also leaving behind a silence that felt both liberating and terrifying. I threw myself into the tea shop, experimenting with new blends, rearranging the space, planning events I'd always been too nervous to try. Luna stopped by regularly, sometimes for tea, sometimes just to chat. She had a way of asking questions that made me think deeper about my goals, my process, my vision for the future. She never mentioned Victor, but I could see her watching me, carefully as if she was monitoring my recovery from something. You seem different, she observed one afternoon as I prepared a delicate white tea from Faijan. More ... present. I ended things with my boyfriend, I said, not sure why I was sharing something so personal. Luna's hands stilled around her. Cup. I'm sorry, that must have been difficult. It was the right thing to do. He didn't understand what I'm trying to build here. He thought I was wasting my time. What do you think? I considered the question while the tea steeped. What? Did I think? For so long, I'd been seeing my work through Victor's eyes, measuring its worth by his standards. I think I'm doing something meaningful, I said finally. Maybe it's not going to make me rich, but it brings people joy. It connects them to something larger than themselves. It preserves traditions that matter. That has to count for something. Luna smiled. That counts for everything. The article came out 3 weeks later, and it was more beautiful than I dared to hope. Luna had captured not just the facts about my business, but the heart of it. She described the shop as an oasis of mindfulness in a chaotic world, and called me a young entrepreneur who's bridging ancient traditions with contemporary needs. The response was immediate and overwhelming. My phone started ringing before 9 a.m. with people asking about hours, making reservations, requesting private tea tastings. The first week after the article ran, I served more customers than I'd seen in the previous month. But more than the increased business, what moved me was the quality of the interactions. People came in having read about the cultural significance of tea ceremonies, wanting to learn, eager to slow down and engage with the process. They asked thoughtful questions, showed genuine appreciation for the craftsmanship involved, treated the space with respect. Luna appeared during the Friday afternoon rush, weaving between tables to reach the counter where I was frantically trying to keep up with orders. Looks like the article had some impact, she said with a grin. Impact? Luna, this is incredible. I've never seen anything like it. People are driving from 3 towns over to try the tea ceremonies. I've got bookings for private tastings through next month. One woman wants to hire me to cater her book club meetings. I'm so happy for you, Claire. You deserve all of this. Success. I couldn't have done it without you. The way you wrote about the shop, about what I'm trying to do here, you made it sound important, meaningful. I didn't make it sound like anything. I just told the truth about what I saw. That evening, after the last customer had left and I'd finally cleaned up from the busiest day in my shop's history, I sat alone among the empty tables and tried to process what had happened. 6 months ago, I'd been ready to give up on this dream. Victor's constant negativity had worn me down to the point where I was questioning everything I thought I knew about myself. Now, looking around at the evidence of a successful day, empty teapots, used cups waiting to be washed, Appointment book filled with future bookings, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Pride, not the defensive pride that comes from proving someone wrong, but the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing you've created something worthwhile. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a wild moment, I thought it might be Victor, maybe ready to apologize, to admit he'd been wrong about my potential. Instead, it was Luna. Saw the crowd today when I walked by. You must be exhausted but exhilarated. Want to grab dinner and celebrate? I know a place that does amazing Chinese hot pot. Seems fitting. I stared at the message for a long moment, my pulse quickening. Was this just a friendly invitation from someone who'd helped my business? Or was there something more behind it? Over the past few weeks, I'd caught myself looking forward to Luna's visits with an intensity that went beyond gratitude. I admired her intelligence, her curiosity, the way she saw beauty and meaning in things other people dismissed. When she laughed at something I said, I felt like I'd won a prize. When she leaned close to smell a tea I was brewing, I had to remind myself to keep breathing normally. But I'd been with Victor for 2 years. I'd only recently ended that relationship. I wasn't even sure what my feelings for Luna meant or if they were reciprocated. I'd love to, I texted back. Give me an hour to close up? Perfect. I'll pick you up at 7. Dinner was a revelation in more ways than one. Luna had chosen a small, family-owned restaurant where the tables were packed close together and the air was filled with the sound of boiling broth and animated conversation. It was the kind of place Victor would have dismissed as too ethnic, or not clean enough, but it felt warm and authentic in a way that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with tea culture in the first place. Tell me about your grandmother, Luna said as we waited for our hot pot to heat up. The one who taught you about tea. I found myself sharing stories I hadn't told anyone in years. How my grandmother would sit with me for hours, teaching me to taste the subtle differences between teas from different regions. How she'd explain the legends behind certain blends, the poetry of tea names, the significance of different brewing vessels. She used to say that tea was like people, I said, dipping thin slices of beef into the bubbling broth. You had to give them time and attention to reveal their true character. Rush the process, and you'd miss all the complexity. Wise woman. She sounds like she really understood you. She was the only one who ever encouraged my interest in tea, and my parents thought it was a phase. My friends in college thought it was weird. Victor. I trailed off, not wanting to rehash those familiar criticisms. Victor thought you should be more practical, Luna said gently. Victor thought I should be someone else entirely. Someone who wanted the same things he wanted, who measured success the same way he did. Luna was quiet for a moment, using her chopsticks to fish vegetables out of the hot pot. Can I ask you something personal? My heart rate spiked. Sure. When you were with him, did you feel like yourself? Like the real Claire? The question hit me with unexpected force. When had I last felt like myself around Victor? When had I last shared something I was excited about without bracing for his dismissal? No, I said quietly. I felt like I was constantly defending who I was, or apologizing for it, like my interests and passions were inconveniences he had to tolerate. That must have been exhausting. It was, but I thought that was normal. I thought relationships required compromise, even if it meant compromising yourself. Compromise, yes, but not erasure. The right person should celebrate who you are, not try to change you into someone else. There was something in Luna's tone, an intensity that made me look up from my food. She was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Luna, I said carefully, why did you really want to write about my tea shop? I mean, I'm grateful, but there must be dozens of small businesses in the city. Why mine? She set down her chopsticks and met my eyes directly. Because from the moment I walked into your shop, I could see that you were doing something special. Not just the tea, though the tea is exceptional, but the way you approach it. The reverence, the knowledge, the genuine desire to share something beautiful with other people. It reminded me why I fell in love with writing about food and culture in the first place. That's very kind of you to say. I'm not being kind. I'm being honest. Luna paused, seeming to weigh her next words carefully. And if I'm being completely honest, I have to admit that my interest in your shop wasn't entirely professional. My pulse jumped. What do you mean? I mean that I found myself looking forward to our conversations about more than just tea. I found myself thinking about you when I wasn't there. I found myself hoping that you'd find the courage to believe in yourself the way I believed in you. The restaurant noise seemed to fade into the background. I stared at Luna, trying to process what she was saying. Claire, I don't want to complicate your life, especially when you're just getting out of a relationship. But I also don't want to pretend that what I feel for you is just professional respect. What do you feel for me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Luna smiled, and there was something vulnerable in her expression that I'd never seen before. I feel like I've been waiting for someone like you without even knowing it. Someone who cares about craftsmanship and tradition. Someone who finds joy in small, beautiful moments. Someone who sees the world the way I do. I felt tears prick at my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of recognition, of relief, of possibility. I've been having feelings I don't know what to do with, I admitted. About you. I kept telling myself it was just gratitude or admiration for your work, but when you walk into my shop, everything feels brighter. When you ask me questions about tea, I feel like the most interesting person in the world. When you smile at me, I forget about everything else. Luna reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were warm, gentle, steady. So what do we do about it? She asked. I looked down at our joined hands, thinking about all the reasons this was complicated. I was fresh out of a long relationship. Luna and I had known each other for less than 2 months. I'd never been with a woman before, never even seriously considered it. But I'd also never felt as seen and appreciated as I did when I was with Luna. I'd never had someone encourage my dreams instead of questioning them. I'd never felt this combination of excitement and peace just sitting across from another person. I think, I said slowly, we take it one day at a time, one conversation at a time, one cup of tea at a time. Luna squeezed my hand. I think that sounds perfect. The next few months transformed my life in ways I couldn't have imagined. The tea shop continued to thrive, developing a loyal customer base of people who appreciated the authentic experience I was offering. I started hosting weekend workshops on tea appreciation, monthly cultural events featuring teas from different regions, and even began supplying several local restaurants with specialty blends. But more than the business success, what changed was how I felt about myself. With Luna's encouragement, I stopped apologizing for my expertise and started owning it. I raised my prices to reflect the value I was providing. I invested in better equipment, expanded my tea selection, even hired a part-time assistant to help during busy periods. Luna and I fell into an easy rhythm. She'd stop by the shop most afternoons, sometimes to work on her laptop in one of the quiet corners, sometimes to help me test new tea blends, always to remind me that what I was doing mattered. We took long walks through the city, discovering hidden gardens and markets. We cooked together at her apartment, experimenting with tea-infused recipes. We talked for hours about our dreams, our fears, our past, our hopes for the future. The physical side of our relationship developed slowly, naturally. The first time Luna kissed me, we were in my shop after hours, and I was showing her how to properly clean a delicate glass teapot. She'd been standing close, watching my hands work, when I turned and found her looking at me with such tenderness that I forgot how to breathe. "Is this okay?" she whispered, her hand coming up to cup my cheek. "More than okay," I whispered back. The kiss was gentle, questioning, full of possibility. When we broke apart, I felt like I was discovering something about myself I'd never known was there. I've never ... I started to say. "I know," Luna said softly. "We don't have to rush anything. We have time." And we did have time. Time to explore this new aspect of myself. Time to build something beautiful together. Time to discover that love could feel supportive instead of stifling. But our peace was shattered on a Tuesday evening in March when Victor showed up at my shop. I was preparing to close when I heard the familiar bell above the door. I looked up from cleaning my counter to see him standing in the doorway, looking around the space with an expression I couldn't read. "Hello, Claire. Victor, what are you doing here?" He'd lost weight since I'd last seen him, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked tired, older somehow. "I wanted to see what all the fuss was about," he said, gesturing around the shop. "I heard you've been quite successful since ... since we broke up." "The business has been going well, yes." He walked further into the space, running his fingers along one of the wooden tables. "It looks different in here, more professional, I guess." I waited, unsure what he wanted from me. We hadn't spoken since he'd moved out. though I'd heard through mutual friends that he'd been struggling with work stress and had been asking people about my new situation. I also heard you're seeing someone new, he said, not meeting my eyes. My stomach tightened. That's not really your business anymore, Victor. A woman. He finally looked at me directly, and I saw something ugly flicker across his features. That's quite a change for you, isn't it, Claire? There was something in his tone that made me nervous. What do you want, Victor? I want to understand how this happened. 6 months ago, you were my girlfriend. You were normal. Now you're running some kind of hipster tea cult and dating women. What changed? I changed. I remembered who I was before you spent 2 years trying to convince me I was wrong about everything. Victor's face darkened. So this is my fault? You discovering you're gay is somehow something I did to you? I'm not having this conversation with you. I moved toward the door, intending to show him out, but he stepped into my path. You know what I think happened? He said, his voice taking on that condescending tone I remember too well. I think you got your feelings hurt when I was honest about your little business here. I think you decided to rebel by dating the first person who told you what you wanted to hear. And I think you're going to realize pretty soon that this whole thing is a mistake. Get out. Claire, come on. You can't seriously think this lesbian thing is going to work out. You're not actually gay. You're just confused and angry at me. I said get out, but Victor wasn't done. And this tea shop. Fantasy? How long do you think it's going to last? One article in a local magazine doesn't make you a success, Claire. When the novelty wears off, when people get bored with the whole artisanal experience thing, what then? You'll still be making barely enough money to survive, still living in a fantasy world where boiling water matters. You need to leave, now. I'm trying to help you, Victor said, his voice rising. I'm trying to save you from making decisions you're going to regret for the rest of your life. This Luna person, she's taking advantage of you. She saw someone vulnerable and confused, and she swooped in to play the hero. She doesn't actually care about you or your tea shop. She's using you for a story, for an experience, for entertainment. The words hit me like physical blows, not because I believe them, but because they echoed every insecurity I'd been fighting against for months. Was I sure about my feelings for Luna? Was I sure about my ability to make this business work long term? But then I looked around my shop, at the evidence of genuine success, at the community I built, at the life I created for myself, and I felt my spine straighten. You're wrong, I said quietly, about everything. About me, about Luna, about this business. And the fact that you can't see that says more about you than it does about me. Victor stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him struggling, with the realization that his words weren't landing the way he'd expected. Fine, he said finally, but don't come crying to me when it all falls apart. Don't expect me to be there to pick up the pieces when you realize you've thrown away a good thing for some fantasy. After he left, I sat alone in my shop, shaking, with adrenaline and anger. Part of me wanted to call Luna immediately, to seek comfort and reassurance. But another part of me needed to sit with Victor's words, to examine them honestly and make sure I wasn't making decisions based on rebellion, rather than genuine desire. I thought about my relationship with Luna, about the way she made me feel seen and valued. Was I dating her because she was different from Victor, or because I genuinely cared about her? I thought about our conversations, our shared interests, the way my pulse jumped when she walked into a room. I thought about how natural it felt to kiss her, to hold her hand, to imagine a future together. No, what I felt for Luna wasn't rebound confusion or misguided gratitude. It was real, and it was mine, and Victor's inability to understand it didn't make it any less valid. I picked up my phone and called Luna. Hey, beautiful, she answered, and just the sound of her voice made me feel steadier. How was your day? Complicated. Victor came by the shop tonight. There was a pause. Are you okay? What did he want? I told her everything, Victor's accusations, his attempt to undermine my confidence, his suggestion that she was somehow taking advantage of me. Luna listened without interrupting, and I could hear her moving around her apartment, probably pacing the way she did when she was thinking hard about something.